Every 5 years, Cuba's communists gather together in Havana to decide the direction of the country. In 2011, the delegates agreed a raft of reforms meant to ease the tight rules on the economy, facilitate private business and increase trade. 5 years on, the vast majority are yet to leave the drawing board, prompting a strong rebuke from Raul Castro. Still, this was to be no warm embrace of capitalist principles, as Castro reiterated Cuba's socialist model and warned against price speculation.
We cannot stand with our arms crossed as our citizens are bothered by the unscrupulous management of prices by intermediaries who only think about making more every time.
Despite a mention of China and Vietnam, it's clear that Cuba's state-run system will only change at its own speed, much to the frustration of many ordinary Cubans. Of course, this Congress comes quickly on the heels of President Obama's historic visit to Cuba last month, and Mr. Castro couldn't fail to make reference to their high-profile visitor.
We have the willingness to develop a respectful dialogue and to build a new kind of relationship with the United States, which has never existed between both countries, because we are convinced that it can only bring mutual benefit. However, it is necessary to reiterate that Cuba should not renounce the principles of the revolution to achieve it, nor should make inherent concessions to its sovereignty and independence.
For some, though, the most interesting moment was a proposal of a maximum age limit of 60 to join the party's Central Committee and 70 to be a top leader. He also urged more women to become leaders in Cuba. The idea that the Castro generation might finally be passing the baton was broadly welcomed on the streets of Havana.
I think it's the right thing to do. You have to open space for the new generation. Each case on its own merits, of course. But as a general policy, I agree with it.
It's good to have young people involved, but that shouldn't mean we lose the experience of the older generations. After all, they got us where we are today. But if Raul Castro thinks it's the best option, that's fine.
After more than 5.5 decades being governed by the same men, many of whom are now in their 80s, these plans could usher in a new generation of leadership for Cuba. Both the call for more women leaders and the idea of age limits for the Central Committee might mean that this is the last Congress to be presided over by the original revolutionaries. Will Grant, BBC News, Havana.